up, everybody? Welcome back to Switch Talk, the perfectly pocket-sized podcast, where we discuss the hybrid console that has stolen our hearts and minds, the Nintendo Switch. We try to keep it between 1 and 29.5 minutes because you have a busy schedule. You know, you just want to hear us chat about games. You don't want too much in life. You just want to relax for a little bit. You're busy. So we're going to keep it short and sweet. In fact, we're going to go right over to Gary Gray and have him introduce himself, plug his social media and all that. We're super excited to have you, Gary. Talk to me. What's going on, bro?
Yeah, so it's been a long time coming. Known you guys for a while. I've been listening to the show since day one, pretty much. So yeah, it's awesome to be on. If you want to find me on Twitter, it's at Gary the Cooper for all the ramblings and nonsense that I do there. And also we've got a website, which is the NintendoVillage.com, which is hosting this show at the minute, Switch Talk, as well as another whole bunch of shows to do reviews, let's plays, news, articles, everything. So just go over there and check that out.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're a listener of the show, we just want to thank you because tuning in really means a lot. Every subscription, every like. And we've moved over to the Nintendo Village. It's been amazing. The website's really well done, top quality, and it's an open door. So if you have podcasts that you want to join up, that's great. If you want to help with writing reviews, Gary's been awesome. Phil's been awesome. They've been kind of heading the larger team, and it's been great working with them. I mean, the future's bright for Switch Talk and the whole website. We're super excited. I'm ecstatic, okay? You know what I was ecstatic for? Faye, the game that we're going to be talking about today. Now, Faye, this little indie darling, was it all window dressing, Clay? Were we deceived? Talk to me about the game.
I came into Faye pretty excited from the first trailer I saw.
Who wasn't?
Because I think Nintendo gave it a little extra push of their own. It was one of their directs. They kind of spotlighted it, if I'm remembering that correctly. And I just remember seeing a trailer and going, wow, that game looks beautiful. I will happily pay for that day one and play it. I didn't even care that EA had their name attached to it. $20. I was like, yeah, let's do it. I don't know a whole lot. I kind of kept my head out of it, just like when it shows up, I'm gonna check it out. And so I was stoked that we decided to cover it because it was one I was gonna buy regardless. And so, yeah, just kind of went in, not sure what to expect. All I knew is visually it was like my cup of tea. I love when video games go outside the box and try to be artistic and not the norm when it comes to visuals. And so right away I was already stoked about that. So kind of walking into it and not knowing what to expect. At first I was a little worried, especially because Gary was a little bit ahead of me in the game. And so some of the things he was saying was concerning me. And then also I heard about, some of the reviews coming out weren't doing so great. And so I was really worried. But then I realized they're all full of hot air, and I had a wonderful time with the game. So,
ooh, okay, so he likes it. And, it's really interesting. I mean, you bring up a good point, Clay, because the stigma of EA is always around. It's always that dark cloud. But the bright side of EA is you see them backing things like Yarny and things like that, and it's supposed to tug at your heartstrings. It's supposed to tell them that they're not a big evil corp, and that they give little indie darlings a chance. And you're right, I was excited as well. Visually appealing, obviously. I tend to go into games fresh, except when I have some type of reservation. Then I want to know everything about it, so I don't get myself into a purchase decision that I regret. That was all really interesting, Clay. You brought up some good stuff. And it seems like you liked it. But
I did, I'm going really easy right now because I don't want to give it all away, so just you wait.
That was all really good, but I didn't like the accent. I think we need to spice it up. I would like Gary to speak to us in that sweet, sweet Greek accent of his. Gary, talk to me about Faye a little bit. Just go ahead.
The thing about Faye is
Faye.
I've been a fan of Zoink for a good while, and I have radio silence whenever there's a game that I like the look of. I try to know as little as I can about it, and I follow Zoink in all their sort of Discord group, all that sort of stuff. So keeping out of spoilers was quite hard, but I managed to. All I knew really was that it starred like this fairy fox thing, and it's full of purple, and I like purple, so sold. So I was going to pick it up day one, regardless of reviews and anything like that. And yeah, I mean, the artistic style is beautiful. It sort of drags you straight in from the get-go. The main character is adorable, and from the trailers that you just see naturally by being in the sort of groups, it looks amazing. And to an extent, it was. It's a nice little platformer. It was kind of exactly what I was expecting in some ways. Like, I was expecting a sort of short N64 era sort of platformer, and I think it really, really did live up to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Zoink is going to be at the precipice of pushing the envelope for visuals, period. And they just have... I was actually surprised because when I knew that Zoink had made it, but then after playing, I kind of forgot, because I think that it is breaking into some new territory, because it's appealing visuals, but I feel like they really broke from the style that they had in the last couple games, which I thought was impressive. And everything was really beautiful. I mean, the game seemed very simple to me, and I kind of was approaching it, for doing the show, trying to get through. But I think that's the wrong way to play the game. You really want to soak up everything that they've done. And I thought that there's the general style, but then the use of color, which is subtly like changing based on what area you're in, and just those little tweaks make it kind of... Because some of the environments were kind of rehashed and there was a lot of assets that were reused, I didn't notice it as much until toward the end. Then I was like, oh, okay, I see what they did here. So a lot of visual tricks went into, keeping it fresh throughout. So I think depending on how much you were looking through that lens of appreciating that, then you were looking at it like, okay, this was really, really short and I've seen it all, or kind of just appreciating it for what it was, minute to minute. So the visuals were one thing, and I think that everybody knew that, just from getting a glance at it. I mean, we were freaking out over the thumbnails we were making for the YouTubes and stuff. We're just like, this is awesome. But then mechanically, like getting into that, like if somebody's on the fence and they're like, oh, you know what? Faye, I was thinking about picking it up. They see the reviews. A lot of them, again, kind of wishy-washy in that area. What did you think about the mechanics? Go ahead, Gary. Talk to me a little bit. Tell me about the gameplay a little bit.
So if you have that idea of it being like an N64 inspired sort of platformer, which not saying that is the inspiration with them, but if you're looking at it like that, then the mechanics are pretty much how you'd expect them to be. They're quite basic in some ways. You don't really have an attack, so you sort of avoid enemy attacks. It's more stealthy. You got your normal jump mechanic, but then you also unlock extra mechanics along the way. Like the first one is the ability to climb trees, which is really cool because the way they've done it is you sort of hop up the tree, so it's not this slow process of slowly crawling up it. So on that respect, it's really good in terms of controls. But there's also this howling mechanic, which is like a singing sort of thing, which is how you communicate with the other animals and plants in the forest, and that unlocks you new ways to go or new abilities within them, and it's really cool. It's a good way of going around it. Quite unique, quite inventive. Really liked it.
I found the singing. The singing is probably the ability that's the most unique. Everything else as far as, the different ways you're going to traverse and climb and swim and all that, it's pretty standard. But for the singing, I just love doing it. And I stuck with the motion controls and try to play it, that way. You could also turn it off and just use one of the analog sticks. But I felt like I was communicating with something, even though it was very, very simple. What'd you think about the singing, Clay? Did that work for you? Did you enjoy that?
It took me a minute to figure it out, and so at first I was like, well, this is really dumb because it's not working. And basically the icons that they use to convey, movement, or use the control stick however you have it set, it just didn't do a very good job explaining how it worked. So I struggled with it for the first little bit, and I was like, this is not very intuitive, and I didn't like it. But then I realized, it's simple, just matching the pitch of the other animal. And so as soon as you find that pitch, you lock it in, and they connect, and then whatever thing happens. And so once I figured that out, yes, it is incredibly simple, and I think it needs to be. I mean, this isn't lock picking in Fallout. It doesn't need to be super difficult because you are doing it constantly, and so I think having something a little bit easier is important. So yeah, I like it. I think it's super fun. I agree with you. I didn't really have any issues with it. Some of the howls and singing kind of sounds a little weird depending on which one you pick, but I thought it was unique and pretty cool. So
there was some variation there. You're right, because you're going between the different animals and kind of mimicking what they're doing, which I thought was again very creative. The animals that you're interacting with are pretty clever designs. I mean, at least aesthetically appealing, and I liked the creatures. I felt like everything kind of had a personality, and that was pretty cool. It seemed a little underutilized in the grand scheme of things, but I enjoyed doing it. The issue that I had was the game seemed... I like challenging games, and there was no barrier, really. It was like, okay, kind of move the stick or move the control to match pitch, and that was it. I wanted something where it felt like I was a little pushback. Like, is this a puzzle? Is it just you want to hold it there and that's to match pitch and that's it? For some reason I was thinking back to the using the ocarina in Legend of Zelda and just hitting the simple pattern and then learning it so you could do it faster if you wanted to. There was something about that where it's like, okay, I have to memorize something, which I think was an interesting way to utilize music to unlock something that happens. And I thought that might have served it well. And in fact, I was thinking that if they had done something where you felt a little bit of skill or memory to it, that might have changed things up for me personally. But again, I think your expectations going in of what you're expecting the game to be has a lot to do with it. I thought that it was interesting that you felt different based on when you're climbing. Felt snappy and quick, but then walking was just okay. And whenever you're in the water, I don't know if you noticed that you kind of move a lot faster, which was interesting, because I would fall a lot for whatever reason. And every movement felt different. And then, the gliding later and everything. Not to get into too, it's such a short game, it's hard to understand what to say as far as spoilers. You both completed the game, right?
correct.
What do you think about the length? Because a lot of people are saying it's short, but somehow it overstays its welcome even because of some of the negatives there. What do you think about the length, Clay? What are you thinking about that?
All right. Well, I could fill the rest of the time complaining about this, so I'll try to make it brief. But
Boom!
I do not think that the length of a game makes it good or bad, and I don't think that should hurt it. I think the only thing you can complain about is whether or not you feel like you got your money's worth. And so I can understand if you pay $60 and a game only takes you 3 hours to beat, that could be frustrating. So I think as long as you look at this game and you say, all right, look at the amount of time I put into it and look how much money I put into it. Like, I guess you could say that, but I don't think the shortness of this game necessarily makes it good or bad. I personally don't like a ton of long games. I honestly prefer, especially with like indie games and stuff, I don't mind a shorter experience. And to be honest, I didn't 100% this, and so there's still a lot more time I could put into it. And most of the people that reviewed this game didn't even 100% it, and then they called it short, which I thought was stupid. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. You didn't even play the entire game, and you're complaining about how short it is. So I'm a little fired up about that. But me personally, I thought it was a good length. I thought it told a good story, and it didn't feel like, a lot was left unanswered or whatnot. So I didn't have any issues with it. What about you, Gary?
I thought the length was perfect, to be honest. I think that you're totally spot on with saying that the reviewers just finished the story and then gave up because, I mean, it's a 3D platformer. They have collectibles. I'm incredibly close to 100% in the game, and it is much longer than 2 hours like some of the people are saying it is. So I think that's a really, really unfair statement that they're putting out there. But yeah, okay, if you're going on story, it is quite short. But I actually think that's about right as well because it's not. Some people don't want to be hooked on the story forever, and I think that this goes parallel with games like Mario Odyssey, which is getting praised for its end game after the story had finished. And what's the difference? I mean, if you're doing a story on Mario Odyssey, you can finish it within 7 hours. I think I did it in. Which, when you're paying like a premium rate for that game, that's worse in comparison. So I think the length was fine. I don't see any issues with that at all.
Awesome. I'm glad we agree.
I'm on the same page with you guys in that in getting with my limited time, limited resources, I want games to be shorter, and I rather take quality over quantity. Back in the day, I would like totally eat up multiple 100-hour RPGs because that's just where I was. But now I rather have that experience, and it's great when the price point matches. And again, I think Faye's coming in at 20, right?
Yep.
I don't know how many rupees or pounds that is for Gary, for them across the pond, but I think it's definitely reasonable. I think, again, my expectations for what it was going to be, how much it was promoted, hurt things in a sense, because I wasn't thinking indie game. I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be one of those top quality, blur the line between AAA and indie. And then for some unfair expectation, you think that, okay, that's going to be a little more meaty. And I disagree in a little bit in that the collectibles and absolutely 100%ing a game, you really have to weigh what you're doing. Because any of the collectibles, I found no, pride. I found no, reason to be looking around and collecting those things. I just didn't feel the draw. Whereas I'm, crack addicted to moons. So there's something there, missing in that sense. So I think it's different. If you do a good job of incentivizing the player to 100% and they feel like, okay, the B-sides in Celeste or something, like people are like, wow, it's like it's more game. You really have to weigh that and say, okay, you didn't complete it, so you do want to be fair. You can't say that it's short without looking at the whole picture, but I think you can judge the quality of the rest that they probably didn't get to. One of the standout things that was not revealed in some of the press coverage was these tall, monstrous Titan things. So one part of the game is I don't even know what they're called. So the enemies are trying to steal your forest friends and then or capture them or eat them. I don't know what's going on. It's a minimalist story. It's a minimalist thing. But then there's these huge, giant, lumbering creatures, and it's reminiscent of Shadow Colossus, God of War. Talk to me a little bit about that and anything that really, stood out. Were you surprised by that? Because I was. Gary, what do you think?
Yeah, I thought those bits were really cool, and the general enemies as well. Using stealth to get by them was pretty good.
What are they, Gary? What are the enemies?
They are the silent ones.
Yeah, but what are they?
No, that's a spoiler.
I can't give that away. That's
okay, we'll bleep that out. So to me, they look like sharp razor shadow creature thingies. That's what I'm gonna call them. So. Does that hurt things for you, Gary? The lack of explanation for everything from the controls to how to do things to what you're actually doing. Oh, and I found out from someone else who had reviewed that a Fae is a type of creature. You're not called Fae. That's not your name. You're not like Mr. or Mrs. Fae. It's that's the name of the little creature thing. Did you guys know that?
No.
Okay, so we don't know a lot. What did you think about that? The mystery of it all, Gary? Does that hurt? Does it help?
Like I say, following Zoink, you learn a few things. Like Fae is pronounced differently in Sweden. It's Fea, I think they pronounce it, and it literally means fairy. So you are the forest fairy guardian.
It all makes sense now.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm the same with Clay at the beginning with the howling. I was there for a good 5 minutes before I realised that the prompts were sort of wrong. They had a bar that's moving up and down, and a picture of the controller moving up and down in the same rhythm. So I thought you had to tilt the controller in the rhythm with what's on screen, and it took me a while. So I was getting frustrated with that to start with. So some of the tutorials on what to do are a little bit empty. They don't do the best job of explaining some things, and so they could have done with a little bit more of an explanation, I think. Maybe a little bit of text in places. As for the enemies, I think the enemies were kind of cool. I would have liked a bit more of a variety and maybe some combat in there. But I understand the lack of combat because it does make it different. So that is fair enough, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, the other creatures in the forest, as you said, there's some gigantic ones there and stuff like that. I think they're actually really cool. I think they what really bring the charm of Fae into its existence, really, is the way that the forest is alive with all these other little creatures and plants and all those sort of things.
I'm gonna throw something at you, Gary. You tell me if this hurts or helps the game, okay? Let's just say there's a little tweak, right? And you go up to the enemy and you kind of learn this ability where you start to sing at them, and you sing and they kind of like start to get damaged and like frozen, and then you match pitch until their head pops right off. What do you think of that? Is that a little too violent for the game? Do you think that would ruin the aesthetic and the peaceful feel of most of it?
No, I think that if there was more enemies and a bigger expansion, then I believe that like having different ways to defeat different enemies could also be something in there. There is a couple of things here and there which you have to do differently to just avoiding, but nothing really too major. No like massive variety in the baddies. So yeah, that's something that I just felt was a little bit lackluster. But I do like the stealth parts in it, to be honest. It does get difficult in places.
Really? I was confused. I don't want to brag, but I got the singing thing the first try, but then the next thing where you're just simply supposed to throw something at a cage to like break it, like a little plant, took me 20 minutes. Like that was by far like I had no idea what I was going on. That was a big sticking point for me. Clay, what'd you think? Like there's a lot going on, a lot of little things. Does it do anything particularly well that surprised you? Because I didn't like the stealth. What did you think about all that? Yeah,
so a couple things. Just to piggyback off the enemies, I loved the enemies in this game. I thought they were scary, they were creepy. I did not expect there to be opposition in this game. For whatever reason, I just kind of assumed it was going to be a walk around, explore, talk to things, find new areas. And all of a sudden, there's these creepy little crawly, one-eyed bad guy dudes. And I'm like, whoa, these guys are super cool looking and super creepy. And so I loved those. So that surprised me, and I was very happy with it. I think there's a lot of variety to this game, and I know a lot of reviewers say that they thought it was kind of monotonous and the same thing over and over, but it felt like at every part I was like, all right, so what's going to be different about this part? Oh, there's stealth. Okay. Oh, in this part it's really dark and you can only see so much. And I could keep going, but I'm not going to list off everything. And so I thought it had a very good amount of variety. I sat down on Sunday and I played this, and Sundays are, I don't know about you guys, my sleepy days where I'm just kind of tired and just relaxing. And this game is super calming and relaxing, and I knew it was going to put me to sleep, and it didn't. And I ended up playing for like 2 or 3 hours, and I just kept going, and I kept thinking, eventually I'll probably put this down and just close my eyes or whatever, and it just didn't happen. And so it was just oddly mesmerizing. It kept me going. Yeah, there was parts where I'm like, what am I supposed to do here? What are they trying to tell me? It wasn't communicated the best, but overall it just sucked me in, and I kept being like, oh, so this is the new part. This is a little bit different. Yeah, maybe it's in the same forest, but it still feels different enough that it's something different. It's not the same thing over and over, because I can't stand games like that. So so that was kind of my thought. Tony, I don't know where you want to take the rest of this conversation, but we are getting down to like the final minutes here. Maybe we should move into some of the negatives. I'm sure you guys got to have some more negative things. Maybe we could just get those out of our way before we do some final thoughts, maybe.
Yeah, I think the most again, you want to give the benefit of the doubt for a lot of things. You want to appreciate it for what it is. So I didn't think that it did anything particularly stand out well or interesting, though I did, enjoy the singing in particular. The hulking things that you had to climb, the big creatures, standouts. But everything else kind of let me down in some way. But again, that kind of has to do with my own expectations. So again, I would call it, generally average. Gary, what do you think? Anything else that you probably really didn't enjoy that we may not have hit on?
So my entire time from start to end was hindered by something. Performance issues. Now, it's not just like drops in frame rate. I mean, the frame rate's pretty low anyway in it, and it's unstable, but it actually comes to a complete halt at points, and basically getting onto the big like Shadow of the Colossus baddies in it as well, or creatures. There was one section where I needed to make a jump, like a good time jump, and the frame just stopped. And then by the time it was back, I was on the floor and totally missed a jump. Also, the software just kept closing down. It kept crashing to the point where it totally closed down. I got stuck in a few places, ended up walking on thin air a couple of times. And to be honest, it happened so frequently that it really hindered my enjoyment, especially at the beginning. Once I got about halfway through, the issues kind of backed away. So the second half of the game I really enjoyed. So I think with a patch, it would be an absolute must-own. But the opening narrative was a bit confusing as well. It didn't really tell you anything. And even though the levels are built up of pretty much the same items, the same trees, the same rocks and stuff, just scattered in a different format, I also felt that there wasn't any landmarks. Like, you were running and the levels were different, but there was no standout landmarks that made you say, right, this is the way I'm going, this is where I should be heading, other than a few little things here and there. So it did feel really similar in places, except for maybe a palette change in colour. So it went from purple to a deeper purple, to a lighter purple, to a slightly blue. And it wasn't until, again, about halfway through that sort of thing also starts changing. So I think with a few extra visual keys there and some performance enhancements, then it could actually be like an incredible game.
Yeah, I fought the camera. The game closed on me once. And again, just it lacks a little bit of polish. I don't know if that was a thing that they, again, plan on patching. But overall, again, beautiful. Clay, what do you think?
Yeah, performance for me, I never had any crashing, so I think kind of your experience may vary. And then I did experience some like frame jutters here and there, but it never really affected my experience playing through, and so I really didn't have a ton of issues with the performance of it, but I could maybe see how people could, struggle with that at times. So really nothing huge there. A couple mechanical issues as far as like game mechanics that I would tweak, but I totally agree. I think with an update, it could be even stronger. But that's a lot of Switch games nowadays where, they're not always their strongest right out the gate. And so I'm going to give my final thoughts here real quick. I think the music is brilliant in this game and super beautiful and really adds to the relaxing feel of it all. Like I said, good variety of gameplay in my opinion. Bad guys were awesome. I thought the storytelling was, it was not always clear what was happening, but it was really dynamic. And there's a certain thing that they do where it kind of changes your perspective. And I thought that was really impactful and cool. The ending is pretty neat too. The epic action sequence that we were talking about with the giant characters was just so cool. It blew my mind. I didn't expect that at all, and it just really was super exciting. Just overall a beautiful and calming game that I just really enjoyed playing and didn't feel stressed and just was really great. I totally enjoyed it. Don't listen to all the negative stuff people are saying, and be a judge for yourself, and I think you should check this game out. So,
if you had to give it a score, Gary, 1 to 5, what do you think?
Oh, don't put me on the spot.
Don't do it.
As it is at the minute, like I said, the performance really hindered what I thought about it. So I'd give it a 3, but towards 4. If it got patched, then definitely a 4. My final thoughts on it really were the visuals were stunning. They're really cool, great art style. The music, as Clay said, and the sound design, the way the characters make noises and stuff like that, was phenomenal. And I really hope they release that soundtrack as a standalone thing. Other than performance and that, really was the biggest downsides. Another downside was the collectibles do actually do things in this game. So there's story that you might miss unless you get one collectible. There's another collectible which kind of gives you some sort of story as well, and another one which unlocks abilities, and they unlock strange abilities, but like one of them was running, which I don't know why they would lock that behind one, and I didn't get that until near the end of the game. So my advice would be to anyone who plays this, go hunting for the unlockables as you're playing it. Just take your time, don't rush a story, go for the collectibles.
All right.
Agreed.
I'll give it it barely squeaks by with a 3 for me. Zoink doesn't usually do sequels. So I think that they should leave it where it was, and I'd like to see something with a little more action. They're usually that quirky, artsy, story-driven games, but I'd like to see that art style and that amount of effort and attention to detail mixed with a little action. So that's kind of where I want to see it. Clay, what do you think? Give it a rank.
4 out of 5.
Ooh! Ooh!
Yep.
He's giving out those 4s like it's candy lately.
Shut up. No,
like
I'm
it's
not.
free candy. Like it's a molasses from heaven. We want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank Gary Gray. Please visit the NintendoVillage.com for the latest in everything Nintendo, from reviews to podcasts to think pieces, blogs, everything. Check it out. Thank you very much for watching Switch Talk. We'll see you next time. We got some really exciting stuff. We're getting back on track. Please resubscribe to iTunes if you like the audio version, because we're on there, but with the Switch to Nintendo Village, we had to resubmit. So please resubscribe and tell a friend. Thanks everybody for Switch Talk and all that stuff. Bye-bye.
See ya.
See ya.